On Story is brought to you in part by the Alice Clayburgh Reynolds Foundation, a Texas family providing innovative funding since 1979. On Story, presented by Austin Film Festival, a look inside the creative process from today's leading writers and directors. This week's On Story, acclaimed Boys in the Hood and Fast and the Furious director, John Singleton.
I always feel like the cheapest way to make a movie is to write it. The hardest thing to do besides write a great screenplay, which is a hard mountain, it's like climbing Everest, is to write a great screenplay. Then the second hardest thing to do, the next mountain to climb, is to get somebody to actually read your thing.
In this episode, John Singleton discusses the influences behind his diverse work from over 20 years of making films.
My story started when I grew up in Inglewood in an area called the Bottoms, which was all these apartment buildings that have now mostly been torn away. And a block over, there was a place called the Century Drive-In. So I grew up on the backside of a drive-in. I used to watch movies with no sound on them. No, seriously, movies with no sound on them. And they weren't they weren't The Godfather. They weren't great movies. They were like, blaxploitation movies, Superfly and Pam Grier, Foxy Brown. I used to always tell Pam Grier her breasts got me in the cinema. You know what I mean? Excited me about cinema. And Bruce Lee movies and slasher movies like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Halloween and stuff, right outside of my window every night. I would watch the films, but without the sound. You know what I mean? I think that that really helped formulate that, and kind of reading a lot of comic books helped formulate my visual acumen. You know what I mean? That you can tell stories of images. So, and this is a time in the early 70s, late 70s, early 80s, where there was a kind of new renaissance in filmmaking and stuff, but not for somebody like me from my background. I didn't have access to a Super 8 camera or anything. I didn't know anything about that. So I used to try to draw animated films in notepads. I'd make little adventures with my comic book heroes and Daredevil and Iron Fist and Luke Cage and stuff. And then I started getting smart. I got my homeboys who do know how to draw every panel, and we'd make these little movies, we call them flip books. But that's how I think I started with films and filmmaking, and then I started discovering, I think I saw a 2020 special on the making of Close Encounters with Steven Spielberg, and I saw Steven Spielberg directing, and I said, I want to do that. I want to do that, what that guy does. 3 weeks before I started school, I saw She's Gotta Have It in Santa Monica, and I ran into Spike Lee.
What about Nola Darling? What do you want to know?
It was his first movie, and I was going to meet him before I graduated high school in February or March of that thing, just before he went to the San Francisco Film Festival with that film. But my mother wouldn't let me use the car because she said, "Oh, this has nudity in it. This is not. I'm not going to condone that."